morning. 15 seconds and we will kick this off. Good morning, everybody. Just keeping an eye on what I can see and what I can hear. Just double check the sound is working. Yep, sound is working. Right, we are having problems with the Binance Square stream. I've stopped and started twice and it hasn't come up, so I've reported it to Binance. But that still shouldn't stop us from going through this stream today. And what we're going to do, as we do every 2 weeks, is we cover everything to do with Maple Finance. And this is a special one because last Friday and Saturday, we had the crash of ages. 20 billion, 80 billion, 200 billion, whatever number you want to believe, worth of liquidations. Longs, shorts, everything was on fire. Now, one of the key aspects of Maple Finance is they are over-collateralized loans. So what we're going to dig into today is an explanation of Maple Finance, but we're going to do it from the point of view of risk management. And I talk to you guys about risk management all the time because it's really important that you understand, you keep an eye on your own risk management because it's important. And as we go through this, what I'm going to try and do when we get to the report is hopefully give you some ideas on how you can carry out your own risk management on a completely different scale, by the way, because Maple currently has about $1.2 billion, maybe even $1.5 billion in loans. We'll have a check of June in a second. So from that point of view, this is, yes, it's about Maple Finance. Yes, it's about the crash. And there should be some risk management tips that you can take away with you. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through Maple Finance's website, go through the products, explain a little bit about that. We're going to have a look at the team. I don't bring the team up very often. We're going to talk about a couple of members of the team. We're going to go and have a look at their X account and very briefly look at some of their latest news because they've got a really interesting mobile phone app as a partner. That was announced 2 days ago. We're then going to look at June Analytics, which I did 2 weeks ago. We're going to do an update on that after the crash, of course. And then we're going to get on to the subject focus, which is going to be talking about the background to the crash, how Maple Finance handled that crash, and then what this means for Maple Finance in terms of reputation, in terms from how they dealt with it. Now, at the end, we're going to go through the chart. We're going to look at the Maple Finance syrup chart. And I'm going to tell you where I think it's going to go in this bull run. And no, you know me, I am not going to sit here and tell you it's going to go to $100. I'm going to give you what I believe to be a realistic price target for it. And then I'm going to give you my conclusions. So that is the aim of the game today. Again, we should probably start by bringing up the website. Now, there are a lot of people on Binance Square. Prakash is here. SNK the Goat, an invisible boy, good morning to you. Unfortunately, I have stopped and started the live stream on Binance Square twice. And I cannot keep kicking people off YouTube to get this to work. So, although you might be able to hear me, I can't stream over there and it's going to end up dying. So, we're just going to get into talking about Maple Finance and their products. And again, if you've been here a few times, you'll know most of this off the top of your head. But we're going to go over it again because there might be some new people on here. And remember another thing about these live streams that I do on Maple Finance. This is to replace the videos. We used to make videos every week about Maple Finance. And that's when they were smaller than they are now. They're now absolutely massive. They're probably going to hit $5 billion worth of assets under management October, early November. When we started, it was $400 million. They've 12x'd in a year. Well, less than a year. So I can't simply sit here and make video upon video upon video because there's just too much to talk about. So let me bring up what we're going to talk about, which is this. This is their website. Now, quite a lot of the products that Maple Finance offer are for institutions. But that doesn't mean that you can't take advantage of some of these products, and we're going to get onto that later on. They are the largest largest on-chain asset manager in the world. They are the biggest asset management company in Web3. Okay? They weren't that 6 months ago, but they are now. So they are the biggest. $4.3 billion assets under management. That's come down a touch, but that does change slightly with the price action of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP, because some of the assets that they have on their books are, of course, their collateralized loans. So they have the Bitcoin and everything else on there. Syrup USDT, Syrup USDC makes up a big chunk of that as well. But $4.3 billion, it's literally 11x'd since we joined them. Not bad, considering we've been with them for a year. Again, they have various different partners that they work with, but we're going to go through some of these products now. So their flagship product, and I said this 2 weeks ago, is their liquid yielding dollar. No longer, since the Genius Act came out, can we call this a yield-bearing stablecoin. And the reason is stablecoins are not allowed to earn yield in America. It's one of the things they've done to try and prevent the banking system in America from collapsing. If you've got $100,000 with your local bank in Arkansas and it's paying you 0.25% and Maple comes along paying you 6.7%, what are you going to do with your money? You're going to go from making $250 a year to $6,700 a year. Of course, you're going to move your money. So stablecoins are not allowed to earn a yield. This is a liquid yielding dollar. And the way this works is very simple. The value of that dollar goes up over time. But it's not a stable coin. It's a liquid yielding stable coin. That's their biggest product. We're going to show you why that is so big in a minute. We also have these other products down here, the high yield, the blue chip, and the Bitcoin yield. Now, high yield, I think it's got the prices down here, 9.8% return on that, 6.8% on the blue chip, and 4.26% on Bitcoin, not 4.6, between 4 and 6%. Now, again, both high yield and blue chip are kind of like the Syrup dollar, but specific. Now, the reason that high yield offers a higher return is that the loans are backed by more than just Bitcoin and Ethereum. So XRP, Wrapped ETH is in there as well. There's a few others. I think Hype is an asset that you can use as collateral. So high yield comes with higher risk because those assets are more volatile. So they pay 9.8%. Also, the people putting up those assets for the loans will have to pay a premium because they're not the pristine asset of Bitcoin and Ethereum. So 9.8% on high yield. Blue chip is 6.8%. But look at blue chip, 6.8%. Liquid yielding dollar is 6.7%. So they're pretty much the same thing, almost. And then Bitcoin yield, which is, and I've said this every 2 weeks now for at least the last 3 months, this is my favorite product. I've made videos about them. I've made videos about CoreDAO. I've made videos about Maple and CoreDAO. I've made videos about Cantor Fitzgerald, CoreDAO, and Maple Finance. Bitcoin yield, for me, is the future. Forget DeFi liquidity pools on a meme coin versus a DEX coin or a SEX coin. This is Bitcoin yield through a combination of CoreDAO paying on Bitcoin and their own product. Now, you can go and replicate what Maple Finance does. Everybody can go and replicate that Bitcoin yield product. But the difference is Maple Finance do it securely, quickly, and easily. And that's why people use it. The issue for you and I, before we go too much further, is this again is slightly institutional. You need a minimum of 25 Bitcoin to get involved with this. Now, I do not have 25 Bitcoin, so I cannot get involved with this. They've got an AUM of $159 million. That means they've probably got about 40 to 60 clients, maybe, I'd say, in that region using this product. but it's paying 4 to 6%. And I think further down, you can see the returns over the months as well. This is my favorite product. Now, the reason I'm highlighting this so much is I believe, and I don't have this as fact, I believe that Maple Finance will be offering some type of yield-bearing Bitcoin. So up here, we have the liquid yielding dollar. I expect them to have a liquid yielding Bitcoin at some point very soon. I don't have a date and I don't have insider information, but that's what I think is going to come on board. Now, that is what I normally cover on here. Of course, down here we can go through other statistics, but most of this is covered by June. Almost 11 billion now. This was 10 billion 2 weeks ago when I covered this. None of these things have changed, but what I want to kind of cover now is very briefly, I want to kind of cover some members of the team. And the reason I want to cover some members of the team is I never talk about them. I always talk about the product, always talk about the growth of the company. I always talk about all that kind of stuff, but I never actually show you the team. And that's quite remiss of me, to be honest. I talk about Sid in some of my tweets, but I don't really mention him on these streams. So I'm going to just basically do that to show you that there are 4 core members of the team. This is not World Liberty Finance with 56 board directors who make decisions over a period of weeks. This is a team that was forged out of the FTX crash, which nearly wiped them out, and they changed their business model after the FTX crash. Sid is the CEO. Of everybody on here, he is the one that you are likely to see online in these AMAs. He's always there. He probably does 2 or 3 of them a week, talking about Maple, talking about the team, talking about the growth, talking about everything that they're doing. But Joe has, from time to time, been known to do a few AMAs as well. So he's another one to keep an eye on. Matt and Ryan, I very rarely see, but they're the COO and the CTO. Sid, of course, is the co-founder and CEO, and Joe is the co-founder and exec chairman. So that's the core team of them. And as I said, as you go through X, crypto, Twitter, looking out, it will be Sid that you will see. I don't call him Sidney Powell. I call him Syrup Sid because that's his X account. So again, go and give him a follow. That's pretty much it from that. What I want to do now is very quickly move on to Maple X to kind of go through the last few things they've done. Again, I covered this 2 weeks ago. So everything up until 2 weeks ago, I've already covered. Right, let me have a look. Let's just kill it. Can't get this to work. I'm going to tell Binance, I'm going to leave Binance a message in a minute to basically explain that it's all gone down. Right then. Yeah, SN Key the GOAT. I stopped and started the stream twice on Binance and it's not coming on. I think they have a problem at their end with the Binance live stream. And Friday's live stream that I didn't work. But then Thursday night, our trading stream worked. Wednesday night clearly worked because you saw that. But my last 2 streams haven't worked. Last 3 if you include the 2 I've tried today. So if it doesn't work, what I have to do is basically turn off everything and then turn it on again. And then that's not fair on the people watching on YouTube, such as Kishan is here today. Good morning. Mags is here. Manjeet is here. You are obviously here. Who else is here? Danny is here. Good morning to you all. I hope you are well. So yeah, it doesn't work, and there's nothing we can do about it. The way that live streaming works, without going off on a tangent, is very simple. You start everything at the same time, and then you end everything. Oh, Tariq. Sorry, Tariq is here. My apologies. You start all the streams at the same time. You can't then stop and start different streams. Okay? So I can't keep turning YouTube off on the hopes that Binance works because it's not likely to work for the 3rd time. So we are going to do this on YouTube. There's lots of people that watch this video back that want an update on what Maple are doing, and that's what we try and do in these. So this is their website. Sorry, not website. This is their X account. Let me just give that a refresh. So this is the pin message. We don't need to cover this. This happened about 4 weeks ago. This is the Plasma chain that went live. Syrup USDT is over there. The $200 million was sold out in less than a minute. Big news for them. But this is the one that I covered yesterday on the live stream on Friday. New yield source, Maple Finance. Maple boasts $4 billion plus in deposits. Now, what I like about this, because I think I actually tweeted this out, is they're moving into retail. Okay? Being on Camino Finance or Aave or anything like that, that's not retail. That's the Degen Bros. That's the crypto Twitter. That's the OGs. Lulo, Revolut, Robinhood, you name it, that's retail. Or that's retail early adopters to crypto. So appearing on Lulo is going to be, for me, another way that they tap into funds, because you could probably throw $200 million, $500 million through all of these different platforms, especially Revolut and Robinhood, and Maple will just eat that up. Now, Lulo is the first one, and I like this because, again, the problem is when you're Maple and you're expanding, you don't want to expand too quickly. You want to be very, very picky about what you do. So you pick Ethereum, works perfectly fine. You then pick Solana. That's where the game change happened, which we'll cover in a minute. Then you go back to Arbitrum. And then what you do is you start to pick up the DeFi platforms and have relationships with them, whether it be Orca, Radium, whether it be Morpho, whether it be Pendle, whoever it might be. You then build out into the DeFi. But that's half the story. Then you've got the institutional side, which you're doing with Cantor Fitzgerald and all of those. And then you've got the kind of more retail side, which is stuff like this. So I am expecting to see more of this in the coming months. Now, going back to the Bitcoin yield product that they don't have, the liquid yielding Bitcoin or whatever they're going to call it. If you've got Robinhood, Revolut, Lulo, and all of those other retail apps all lined up, and you've already got your Syrup USDC on there, guess what? Here comes Syrup BTC, which pays, let's say, 3%. And then suddenly, people who are sitting on Bitcoin are going, that's a great idea. I'm going to go and earn 3% on my Bitcoin. That's probably the direction they're going to go in, but I can't say. So that was a really positive move from Maple. The drip season has come to an end. We're not going to talk about drips now. We don't have enough time. This is what we're going to talk about later on. This is the report from Maple Finance on the crash. That's the entire point of this stream. And then if we go further back, this was talking about it in the eye of the storm. Maple was not impacted by market volatility. All loans remain over-collateralized. And then they've done some really good work with Keyrock. Keyrock have done a report on Maple. That's worth looking at. And then October the 8th, which is literally 10 days ago, they hit $10 billion in loans. They're already nearly at $11 billion in loans. So that's the growth of X. And I don't want to spend too much time on that because we have to go and talk about this page. And then we're going to get into the report. And then we're going to get into the Syrup token itself. And if you've never heard of Maple Finance, biggest on-chain assets manager in the world. 4.3 billion. I think we did get to 4.6, 4.5. So we're on 4.3 now. Now, again, I've been saying this for a while, that this looks like any meme coin you've ever seen on pump.fun, okay? Because it's not just up and to the right. Normally things go up at a 45-degree angle. This is a 60, 70-degree angle. And the reason for that growth is the orange that you see here, okay? There. So that orange section, which I'm trying to roll over here, that is Syrup USDX, so USDC, USDT. And that's where the majority of the growth has come from in the last 6 to 12 months. Most of the other colors, the Bitcoin yield product, the high yield, the blue chip, everything else, that is going up, yes. And they would have had a good year without the liquid yielding dollar. But that Syrup USDC growth is phenomenal. Now, of course, we're seeing at the very tip here, which you can't see my mouse, but I'm trying to point to it, that is from the crash downwards. So if we go in here, they went up to $4.65 billion asset under management, and they're currently at 4.3. So they've lost $350 million since the crash. But Bitcoin's also lost almost 20% of its value. So that's expected, okay? Because everything on here is slightly related to the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum and things like that. So when we have a market correction, as we had here, which was, what's that date? That was in the middle to end of July. We also saw the dip there as well. So these dips do happen. Also, I've been saying for a long time, I do expect this to plateau for a while. Now, that might not happen until Q1, Q2 next year, Q3 next year, but at some point it's going to plateau. Maybe it plateaus at 10 billion. Maybe it plateaus at $20 billion of assets under management. But the reason this chart looks like this is they are the biggest growth business in an expanding market. So we're not talking about meme coin upon meme coin upon meme coin. We're talking about real world assets, the tokenization of real world assets, which you hear coming out of everybody's mouth. Larry Fink talks about it all the time. This is the big thing. This is where TradFi meets CDFi, whatever we want to call it. This is where Web3 brings TradFi online. And this type of growth is not unexpected. This type of growth can be maintained because you're bringing assets online. And we spoke about this on Friday. The more Bitcoin treasuries, the more Ethereum treasuries, the more XRP, the more hype treasuries that there are, the more they are going to demand loans. The more they're going to demand that they can tap into the value of their Bitcoin. If you're a treasury and you've held 1,000 Bitcoin in your treasury from Bitcoin being $50,000 or $60,000, it's now at $108,000, $107,000. Your treasury's doubled in size in a year, and you might need to open a new office somewhere. You don't sell your Bitcoin. That's the pristine asset. What you do is you use it as collateral and you borrow against it, and that's where Maple comes in. So the more treasuries there are, the more Bitcoin treasuries there are, the more opportunity there is for Maple. And that's why this is somewhat of a sustainable path. But it's a sustainable path over the next 10 years. This is the birth of a brand new industry. So although it looks like a pump meme coin, it's not. It's actually what happens if I opened a restaurant in the middle of a desert and you built a block of flats. My restaurant would have business. If I built a second block of flats, my business's growth would grow. And as long as blocks of flats are being built around my restaurant, I am going to get more and more business. And those blocks of flats are crypto Bitcoin treasuries, and they're being built on a weekly basis. And the only go-to provider in the market that's worth any salt, as the expression goes, is Maple Finance. So that 11 billion in assets, that 11 billions in loans, that could be 50 billion this time next year, 100 billion. It could be $1 trillion worth of loans within the next 5 to 10 years. And that's not hyperbole, that's not moon, that's just simple fact. If we transfer 1 million or 2 million Bitcoin into the hands of treasuries and they want to tap into liquidity, where do you think they're going to go? Maple. So this growth, although it looks extreme, it's sustainable as long as more and more treasuries are created, the value of Bitcoin goes up. Even if the value of Bitcoin comes down to 80,000 in the bear market next cycle, that's really not going to put that much of a dent in Maple Finance if their loan book expands from, where is it now? So their loans outstanding are 1.65 billion. If that goes to a $5 billion loan book and 3x's, this number here will become 12 or 13 billion in AUM, but then there's a correction in the market, it's still going to be a 9 billion AUM assets under management. So they're going to expand into the next bear market, into the next recession, and it really doesn't matter, because as long as those loans are over collateralized, which we're going to look at in a minute, it doesn't really care. So the next important thing, we're not going to look at all of these things, is this. This is their revenue. How much money are they making? Now, I'll show you this. This is $1.5 million. This is 1.3. This is 1.4, sorry, 1.5. And so far, with 12 days to go, they've just broken $1 million. This is equally, if not more important, than every other chart and number up here. This is how much Sid and Co are bringing into their business. This is the amount of money they can use to expand their business, whether that be through marketing, whether that be through members of the team, whether that be through paying protocol fees to expand syrup to a different chain, whatever it might be. Now, again, similar to what I was saying before, this could very well plateau in the next 6 months, 9 months, 3 months, with the correction to the downside at the end of the bull run. Of course it can. But if it corrects to the downside from $2 or $3 million, and they were only making, they only broke $1 million here, which was May. So their cost to run their business is certainly not going to be anywhere near $1 million a month. I can pretty much guarantee that. So what will happen is they might plateau at $2 or $3 million worth of income, and then if there is a market correction, maybe they only bring in $2.2 million a month, $1.6 million a month, but they are still in a stronger position, way stronger position than they were down here. Now, in a bear market, what do people do? They sell their crypto, and what do they buy? They buy stable coins. That's right. But they don't buy stable coins, do they? Because they're buying syrup, which pays them a yield. So what happens as Bitcoin contracts and crypto contracts, people go to stable coins and they go to fiat assets. But in this instance, this is a yield bearing dollar asset, liquid staking dollar. So this syrup USDC value, which is currently standing at about 2.6 billion, that could easily go to 4, 6, 8 billion. And again, Maple can keep a lid on that because they issue that money. They issue it, they mint it. So they create 200 million, 200 million, 200 million because it's backed by their assets. So they can control their level of growth. It's never going to go out of hand. So again, even in a bear market where most things will come down in value, there is a good chance that the bear market actually is more beneficial to Maple than where we are now. Because where we are now, why would you put your Bitcoin into Syrup USD when you think Bitcoin's going to $150,000? However, when we get to $150,000 for Bitcoin, you're going to be thinking, I need to put some money on the side. I need to maybe sell some of my assets, draw down, dollar cost average out of the market. Well, if you're going to dollar cost average out, where are you going to dollar cost average out to? You're going to dollar cost average out to either your bank account or a stable coin. This is the third answer, and I've been covering this for about 6 months on X, telling people that when you start to dollar cost average out, if you can dollar cost average into a company that can pay you 6, I mean, the other thing that's likely to happen is as the demand for this spikes during the bear market, there's a really good chance the 6.7% falls. You know, maybe it comes down to 6.2, maybe it comes down to 5.5%. But 5.5% is still a good return because, believe you me, Tether and Circle are not going to be paying 5 or 6% in a bear market. Now, this is the entire purpose of this video today, the Maple Risk Management October the 10th volatility event. So this was where we had cascading liquidations, Binance broke, Coinbase went offline, everybody was crying, everyone was blaming everybody else. You had Ben Cowan arguing with crypto Crow, you had Crypto Crow arguing with CZ. It was just mayhem. And at no point during this event, Black Swan, did I think that Maple Finance was under any level of risk. And the reason is that we've already had this before. We had Liberation Day. And on Liberation Day, Trump stood there waving his placards, showing you that the Seychelles Islands were getting a great deal on America, so America's going to stick a 500% tariff on the Seychelles Islands. And then the Falkland Islands, they've got too many sheep, so we're going to put a 400% tariff on the Falkland Islands. And all of a sudden, the entire market's crashed. Everybody told you that there was going to be a global meltdown. Everybody told you that this was the end of the world. Everybody told you that finance was going to crash and everything was going to go to zero. And what happened? We had a V-shaped recovery because he breaks the eggs to make his omelette. And that was breaking the eggs. And what we've just seen last Friday was Trump breaking eggs. And the biggest egg of all is China. And that is exactly what he's doing. I've been trying to portray this for a week now, that this is not something to worry about. Could an event like this trigger the end of the bull run? Absolutely it could. Okay, it could take the sting out of any bull run because it's a global macro event. But I don't think we're at that point yet. But Maple, on the other hand, what you got to remember is, let's say that they have issued $1.5 billion worth of loans. That means that on their books, and I'm just picking numbers out of the air here, so bear with me, these aren't going to be absolutely accurate. They may have $2.5 billion worth of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Hype, XRP on their books. Now, over-collateralized loans are, I want to borrow $100, and Maple say to me, give me $150 worth of Bitcoin, and you can have your $100. I'll say absolutely. Then there is a market correction to the downside, 10%, 15%. In some instances, it was 25, 30%. But for Bitcoin, let's say a 10% drawdown. Maple have a threshold where the assets that they have that back your loan have to stay above a certain value. So let's say there's a liquidation event when my Bitcoin goes to $120 or $115. So what Maple do is they will contact you and say, listen, you are close to being liquidated, so you need to top up your loan. Now, I've got my $100 and you've got my Bitcoin, but I want to keep my loan, so I'm going to send you another $50 worth of Bitcoin to keep my loan. So suddenly, my $120 goes back to $170 or $150, whatever they say, and then my loan restores the collateral. And what's important when these flash crashes occur is some of the statistics that came out of Maple after this event were outstanding. They were just outstanding. You expect things to happen. But again, I go back to Liberation Day. Nobody had problems on Liberation Day, and nobody had problems on October the 10th because they have correct risk management. And that's the important thing that we're going to try and cover in this. So we know what happened in the crypto markets. Despite the volatility, Maple's institutional loan book remained fully over-collateralized and performing. 0 liquidations, 0 losses, highlighting the resilience of Maple's underwriting and risk management processes. Again, one of the things that we don't have time to talk about is there is a GitHub book of everything that they do. So all of their information about how they deal with flash crashes, how they deal with the loans and the collateralization, it's all in there, but we don't need to cover that. We're going to go through this very slowly. So 0 losses or liquidations across the loan book. So all of those loans, not a single person that had taken out a loan was liquidated. So nobody lost their assets. All the margin calls were cured within 3 hours. So you phone me and say, listen, Mike, you're down to $120 worth of Bitcoin. Can you send us $30? Absolutely. Ding. Because the people that are, that put up these assets, they don't want to be liquidated. That could be their treasury. They don't want the treasury liquidated, so they send more. 67 million in lender redemptions processed amidst market turbulence. So, some people may have panicked, repaid their loans, and got their assets back. That's what it was. So, I've got my $100, you've got my Bitcoin. I panic and I say, listen, Maple, there's the $100 back plus interest. Can I have my Bitcoin back? Maple then send the Bitcoin back to the lender, and that loan is closed. Only $67 million out of a loan book of $1.5 billion. That's what? 3% maybe? about 4%. Not bad. 2 consecutive days of inflows following the event, restoring deposits to all-time highs. Loan book quality improved as borrowers proactively swapped altcoin collateral to Bitcoin. Again, lots of things we saw in the market. Bitcoin came down, alts got trashed. And the reason that this is worth highlighting is if I've got a portfolio of $100,000 and I'm thinking that the alts are just going to get wrecked, I'll swap it to Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin it will fall lower than the likes of Hype. It will fall slower than the likes of Hype. So if I'm going to carry out correct risk management, I'm going to go to Bitcoin. And that's something that we try and preach to you guys. I think 60%, 57% of my portfolio, something like that, is in Bitcoin. Something like that. And then Ethereum makes up another 10% or something. So about 75% of my portfolio is in Bitcoin. I'm at all-time highs for my portfolio this cycle already. If you're not at all-time highs and you've been holding for 2 or 3 years, then you are altcoin heavy. That's the difference. I am Bitcoin and Ethereum heavy, more Bitcoin heavy than anything. But if you are, right, I'm going to go for Hype, I'm going to go for Aster, I'm going to go for Pump.Fun, World Liberty Finance, I'm going to go for Dupe, I'm going to go for all of these coins which are not Bitcoin and Ethereum, you are nowhere near all-time highs. And I think what's happened with a lot of institutions is they've looked at this and gone, we can't use some of these coins as collateral because they're too volatile when this stuff happens. So what we're going to do is we're going to stick with Bitcoin. And that's a risk management decision. And I think a correct risk management decision. I've already had a conversation with you about the fact that I don't believe that all of these treasuries should exist. There are treasuries out there which are based on SUI. Now, SUI could be the greatest blockchain mankind has ever created. But being the greatest blockchain and being the one that people use are two entirely different things. Solana has its faults. Bitcoin has its faults. But guess what? Bitcoin's the biggest asset. Solana's top 5. Ethereum is second. SUI's got years to go before it will get there. BlackRock are building on Ethereum, not building on SUI. They might expand to SUI, absolutely. So why put your treasury into SUI? And that will probably be a conversation that's been had by a lot of these institutions. Why are we holding Hype and XRP when they go down 35% in a correction and Bitcoin only goes down 8-10% in a correction? We'll just hold Bitcoin. And yes, you can say, well, they're not going to bounce back as fast as Hype and XRP. They'll go further. It's not about maximizing profit. It's about preservation of wealth. There's a big difference between the two. If I hold Bitcoin and my portfolio is at all-time highs and you've got alts that are going to outperform my Bitcoin, why is your portfolio not at all-time highs? You should be outperforming me. You should be doing way better than me. And the reason you're not is Bitcoin is more to do with wealth preservation than wealth appreciation. And yes, it goes up. You know, if you'd bought it at $20,000, you've done a 5x. But yes, if you'd bought XRP at 30 cents, you maxed out at a 12x. Of course, it does. But that volatility does not sit well with that word right there, risk management. That set phrase right there, risk management. So, Maple entered the event with collateral levels above 150% and 84% of total collateral held in Bitcoin, minimizing exposure to altcoin volatility. Absolutely fantastic. So now we've got a benchmark, which was kind of what I was saying, $100 for $150 of Bitcoin. So now we know. In theory, that $150 of Bitcoin has got to drop 33% to hit the value of your loan. That really, I can't see that happening in a flash crash. Maybe over a period of 3 months, but not in a flash crash. Friday evening, Maple's credit team worked directly with borrowers to top up collateral, repay loans early, and upgrade collateral to Bitcoin where appropriate. Of the 9 margin calls issued, only 3 were Bitcoin backed, with the rest resolved promptly across diversified collateral types. As a result, Maple's collateral composition has become even stronger, with a higher concentration in Bitcoin and over collateral quality improving after the event. Utilization remains unchanged, demonstrating borrower quality and sustained deployment. Now, that's one part of the story. The second part of the story is this. These 2 products are backed by those loans and those assets. So, if you're wondering where the loan comes from, it comes from Syrup USDC and USDT, amongst other things. Also the high yield thing and the blue chip I showed you before. Now, of course, Maple are not going to hold $1 of Bitcoin for $1 of USDC. That's how we end up with algorithmic stablecoins that just go to the wall all the time. This is about having over-collateralized yield-bearing assets. So in Syrup's case, Syrup USDC is 130% over-collateralized at its lowest. Currently 156%. Syrup USDT is 140% over-collateralized at its lowest point during the crash, 148% at this moment in time. Across both of them, 67 million in withdrawals were processed instantly on Friday and throughout the weekend, with net inflows over the last 48 hours approaching all-time highs in deposits. While nearly 20 billion in leverage was erased across the market, Maple emerged stronger. The result is a more robust loan. So that is what happened with Maple over that period of time. Right, let me just very quickly jump into chat for a second before I carry on. Yeah, so basically we're going to talk about Syrup token in a minute. Which I've talked about on the last 3 or 4 different streams we've done about this. And the reason this is important is where you have a lot of, what's the word, eyes, where a lot of people look at your product, you've got to back that up. And there's a lot of products out there that were great buys before this crash, and now after this crash, people looking at them and going, I'm not too sure about this. Now, there's a term that people have been using in the last few days called floating bodies. And what that means is, in a storm, in a bad storm, by a river, for example, hurricane hits, infrastructure crashes, whatever it might be, you don't see the full extent of the damage until the storm passes and then the river starts to flow downstream. And that's when you see the floating bodies. And that's the term they use in finance. And what that means is there are a couple of funds, not very big funds, a couple of funds now do not exist. They've been completely wiped out because they were in leverage, destroyed, all funds lost. And floating bodies is something we probably still haven't seen the end of. So when we saw the FTX collapse, it collapsed over a series of weeks and months because of the contagion and the knock-on effect that it had. So people borrowed money to FTX. FTX collapsed. They don't get their money back. People find out that they've lent money to FTX. They call their loans back from that company. And it's like a chain effect of everything just collapsing. And what's important about me looking at June, me looking at Maple's risk report, me looking at the metrics, is to show you that they came out of this with flying colours. Now, you could sit there and say, well, now that you've explained Maple to me, that sounds so risky. That sounds really risky. because they're backing their they're backing their yield assets with loans. Of course, there's risk in absolutely everything. But when it's Bitcoin as its collateral, and when it's over collateralized by 50%, and when you're growing and you can control your growth, because Syrup USDC and Syrup USDT are printed or created by Maple Finance. It's all in their control. They don't have loans where Syrup USDT is suddenly a $25 billion project, and they're sitting there going, we've only got $4 billion assets under management. It doesn't work that way. Syrup issue their own tokens, in this case USCC and USDT, so they can control that. And if they want to contract, if they want to bring it down because the loan book has been reduced, they can do that. So it's a case of saying, in the worst crash crypto has ever seen, 10 times the liquidations of FTX and Luna and everything else, in that market, in that scenario, in that storm, Maple had zero liquidations. In that thunderstorm, nobody got hurt. Now, there are at least 20 or 30 companies out there that probably haven't announced how badly they have been wrecked. And we're going to see that in the next couple of weeks. And that's why it's important that when something like this happens, I go through with a fine-tooth comb and find anything that went wrong with Maple. So we look at June, because that's an independent source. We look at their own report, which isn't an independent source, but highlights what actually happened. So we can also look at Syrup, the token, which is separate, but still a sign of trust in the company. We can show you all the products they offer, we can show you the team, and we can have a proper in-depth review of the entire thing. So we know what's happened in the report. The business has now seen off Liberation Day and Liquidation Day. Let's call it Liquidation Day. It was battle tested on Liberation Day, and it's had its major battle 8 days ago, and it's come out the other end. So I think we should all be pretty relieved with everything that comes out, because we're going to talk about the Syrup chart now in a minute. This is where it does this to me every time, Every time I create the Syrup chart, and it never brings it up. Is this going to show me? There we go. Perfect. Right. So this is the chart I want to show you. What are we in the 1 hour for? Hang on 1 minute. There we go. Okay, here we go. There we go. Now, one thing I love to talk about is project versus token. Now, if you were a stock trader and you came to crypto, you would have a field day. You would make a fortune. Stocks move slower. Currencies, commodities, all move slower. Everything's moved slower than crypto. And everything in stocks and shares is about trying to find a gem of a project which is undervalued. Now, we will never say at any point that the Syrup token is a share of Maple. I'm just giving you an example of people coming from stocks to look at crypto. And I've left this on here for a very good reason, because I think this is the most important, the important two numbers and line you need to see. The market is Bitcoin. The market moves when Bitcoin moves, and the market reacts to what Bitcoin does. And everything else is irrelevant. I showed you the crypto bubbles yesterday, I think it was. And to a coin, every coin, without exception of a few outliers, was down precisely the same amount over the periods of time that I've shown you, which was about 30% in one instance and 40% in another instance. So what does that tell you? It tells you it doesn't matter about your project. It doesn't matter about your performance. It matters how you hang on in a market that is dominated by Bitcoin. And this sums up everything about that. I've shown you the June chart, which from June to today is like that. It's like 60, 70 degree angle, like I said. But look at the price of Syrup. Syrup at $2.2 billion assets under management, the token was at 65 cents because the market was in a different phase. The market is not in that phase anymore, and the market is still super bearish. Bitcoin's at 108, 107. Alts have been absolutely wrecked. And Syrup is now down. Actually, it's not half of what it was. When we did this a few weeks ago, it was actually lower. But Syrup is down, let's say, 50%, for argument's sake. 40% from where it was at 65 cents. Does anything I've shown you today give you any indication as to why this should be at this price? No. So it's got nothing to do with the performance of Maple and everything to do with the performance of the market. And a lot of times you look at your portfolio and you go, my portfolio is terrible. I can't believe I've picked these coins. But Tariq's portfolio, my portfolio, and your portfolio will all have pretty much the same performance, apart from maybe Asta here, Hype here, World Liberty Finance here. If we all held if we all held Solana, XRP, Cardano, Ethereum, if we all held all of those coins within our portfolio, they're all going to have roughly the same performance. So you can ignore that. But what is interesting is if we look at what's just happened with Maple. This is on the daily chart, by the way. Look, if I move some lines up here, look at where Maple came to. It came to the top of the bull market support band, which is, of course, the moving average. It came to it, and it got rejected. So what's next? We're going to have another go at it. What we're probably going to do is have another crack. And then we'll have another crack, and then it'll break. So, if we want to talk about where I would buy Maple, there is a line here. If I just steal one of these lines again. Give me a second. I will grab this line eventually when I actually click on it. There we go. Right. So this line here is where we were holding support on Syrup, and it was doing really well. Okay. So even over here, even here to some extent, that's the line on which Maple bases itself. And that line there is about 40 cents. And that's been massive, massive support. A little bit like Bitcoin and its bull market support band, but held that support band like a trooper, and now it's cracked. Same with Syrup. But this recovery should tell you everything you need to know about Syrup. And that is, a lot of coins didn't have this bounce. A lot of coins did, but a lot of coins didn't. So you would group Syrup, in my opinion, with the bouncers. The coins that recover when Bitcoin recovers and Bitcoin goes up and the macro changes. So what I mean by that is, let's say that the market crashes and Cardano goes from 60 cents to 40 cents. And then the market recovers. Hype goes up 25%, Litecoin goes up 15%, Syrup goes up 15, 20%, and then Cardano goes up 3%. That is people looking at the market and saying, which coins do I want to buy right now that I think have got the best chance of going on and getting me the best return? And they'll go and buy Hype, they'll go and buy Litecoin, they'll go and buy Syrup, but they're not buying Cardano. So that should tell you a lot. If I've got a supermarket and I reduce the price of everything by 30%, you're going to go and buy your favorite things, aren't you? Maybe you go and buy some chicken. Maybe you go and buy some apples or some pears. But if nobody buys the bananas, that's not a good sign for bananas, is it? Because nobody likes bananas. So when the market recovers, you look for the bouncers. You look for the coins that recover the best or the most. Now, the one thing I have seen in the last 7 days that supports this is there's an awful lot of so-called gem hunters, X accounts with 200,000 or 300,000 followers that are picking out the next gem, the next project that's going to go on to do massive, massive things. And a lot of them are picking syrup. Because I've seen at least 5, maybe more, but at least 5 that I can think of people who've done deep research and deep dives into Maple Finance, and this token is undervalued and whatever. And then you're going to start to see something else. You're going to start to see people telling you, and again, tapping into your greed, okay, that are going to tell you that Maple is going to go somewhere up here, which is about $5. That's where they're going to tell you it's going to go. Minimum of $5 for Maple. Absolutely going to smash it out of the park. It's going to do a 12x in a week. No. My target, my bull case scenario is about 188. Don't know where that line came from. I've drawn it weeks ago. But if I want to be really honest, from where we are now, I would accept anything in this range here, which is about 110 to 150. I think 65 cents was probably a really good price for syrup at 2.2 billion. Now imagine we get to 5 billion, 6 billion by the end of the year, appreciation and stuff like that. Then that's got to be the area, that's got to be the area we look at. That area there. 2 to 3 times larger AUM. More revenue coming in. Maybe we hit 2 million in October. Maybe we hit 2.2 million in November. So double or triple the revenue coming in, double or triple the assets under management, and we're not going to be looking at 70 or 80 cents for syrup, are we? We're going to be looking at a minimum of a 2x. So a 2x is pretty much, I need to move my little x. I've actually got my x in the wrong spot. So I'd say that area there, 130, maybe 120, 130. That's my area for syrup. If I get to $1, or if we get to $1 on syrup, I am personally going to be selling it. Okay. Now, a lot of the tokens I cover on here, I don't own. And you know that because I tell you. But some tokens I do. And I hold syrup. And I am holding it for $1. Now, you can go and listen to anybody you want, tell you whatever price you want to hear. But I am telling you what I am physically going to do. And I am happy to post you receipts. I am happy to show receipts of where I think we're going to go. Bitcoin is king, says Kishan. You're absolutely right. SNK the GOAT deleted something. Crypto is a water drop in the sea of Forex. That's one way to describe how tiny it is. Did syrup burn some tokens at that crash? So, one thing that I said on yesterday's stream is gold has moved $6 trillion in, I think, less than a year. And in the last few months, gold has moved $4 trillion. The entire crypto market is less than the gold move. Gold is over 30 trillion. When we were covering it and Bitcoin was going to 100,000, whatever it might be, gold was at 23 trillion. It's moved 7 trillion. The entire crypto market and everything that's been thrown at it is almost half of that gold move. That's how far Bitcoin has got left to go. It's got a long way to go. And as I've been saying to you before, it's easy for you to sit there and say, well, yeah, Bitcoin just needs to do a 10x to catch gold. But that's saying that Bitcoin is on a moving train and gold is stationary. Gold will continue to go up. It might retrace now. It might come back to 26 trillion or 25 trillion. It might have its time, fine. And maybe some of that money comes into Bitcoin, and maybe that's what propels us up. But at the end of the day, by the time Bitcoin hits 10 or 15 trillion, gold is very likely to be over $40 trillion. So how far has Bitcoin got to go to catch gold? It's going to take forever. It might not happen for the next 40, 50 years. So even though I don't like Peter Schiff, gold is still king. Bitcoin is king of crypto, but gold is the ruler. So I think 120 is possible for Syrup. Absolutely. When we got to 65 cents at 2.2 billion, I had a target of $1.20, and I even tweeted it out. I think I've tweeted it out. It's in a tweet somewhere, me saying $1.20. I think that's realistic. I think maybe, and again, I left a message for somebody. I'm not going to say the name. I left a message for somebody when I was talking about this bull run, and the issue is the bull run is less than 5 weeks, start to finish. Started on the 30th of October 2021 and was done by about the 6th of December. So 34 days, I think. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's the 3rd of December. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's 5 weeks from start to finish. And until we get into it, until we start to absolutely ramp up, we can't say for absolute fact that it's going to be November or December or January or February, because it's such a short space of time. Now, Crow, which is the one I've recently done the stats on, went from 21 cents to 96 cents in 3 weeks. 21 cents to 96 cents in 3 weeks. It did a 4x from a way bigger market cap than Syrup has got today. So that's one thing. The second thing is there is 10 times the number of cryptocurrencies today as there was 4 years ago. And that might counteract the argument of a 4x in 3 weeks. But if we did a 4x from where we are today, that would put us at $1.50. I think that's entirely doable. The market cap of Syrup, I believe, is what, $500 million? Let's have a look. Let me have a look. I could be wrong. I'm sure it was around 550 million last time I checked, but maybe it's crashed since then. There we go. So it's 454. Come on, load. There we go. Right, so the market cap is $454 million. It really isn't very big. When you talk about market caps of other things, it really isn't that big. So could it go, if we're going to do a 4x, that would put it at a $1.8 billion project. Do you think a company that's got, let's say by that time, $5 or $6 billion asset under management, with maybe a loan book of $3 billion, with maybe incoming revenue after it's paid out everything on Syrup of about $2.5 million a month, do you think a $1.8 billion valuation for the token is valid? I would absolutely say it is. If we go and look at Ondo, Ondo is 95% speculation. I think Maple is 95% deliverables, because Maple, we talk about, look at companies that make profit, look at companies where you can explain how they make their money in an elevator. You can look at all of those things and Maple ticks every box. If you look at Doge, why is Doge in the top 10? Because Elon Musk at some point might use it as a token to give away on X. Is not a reason to buy a token. It's like going to a pub because the girl of your dreams goes to the same pub, and then you randomly expect her to come up to you and start chatting you up. Never going to happen, my friend. Never going to happen, right? Maple is open for business, generates revenue, has gone through 2 massive market corrections in a massive industry, and the token price is not reflecting the growth of that business. I would argue that Ondo has got a price of a token where the speculation hasn't quite yet come reality. Now they're going to launch their own tokens. They're going to launch their own synthetic stocks. We know all of those things. It's not here. It's not fully functional yet. Maple is fully functional now. So that would be the difference. So if you said to me, can it go to $1.20? I'm going to start selling when we get towards $1. That's when I'm going to start selling. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But that's just the way it is. That's the way I see things. Because why do I like Chainlink? It makes money. Why do I like Dupe? It makes money. Aerodrome makes money. All the DEXs, all the big DEXs, they make money. A lot of the projects that we look at on here make money. WolfSwap makes money. They all make money. And if you're, you know, I know this sounds like a really bad example, and I harp on about it all the time. I remember when the internet started. And when the internet started, you had all kinds of things that were out there, real weird and wacky projects like we have today. And the question is, how do you make money? And the answer is normally going to be, we have a runway. We have a 5-year runway to make money. Now think about the reality of that. You open any business and you say, we're not going to make a profit for 5 years. But you're going to back us, but we're not going to make a profit for 5 years. Now, does that work? It worked for Amazon. Absolutely. It worked for Netflix. Absolutely. But for every one of those companies, 10,000 companies failed. Because this is cutthroat. If you don't make money, you are finished. I prefer companies that make a profit. I prefer companies that announce they're making a profit. Chainlink flicked a switch 12 months ago, 6 months ago, and now they're buying back their own token with the profits that they're making. They're making a fortune. Maple, at a $5 billion asset under management, $6 billion asset under management with a loan book of $2.5 to $3 billion, is going to be making maybe $2 to $3 million a month income for a team, a small team. They're going to be paying out their yield-bearing assets, probably going to hit $4 billion. Everything about it is making money, and that's what I like about them. What else is there? 1 kilogram of gold is almost 1 Bitcoin. Weird example. Thank you, Mr. Goat. I love Maple. Thank you, Marco. I do, and I think the reason I like it is that we wanted to work with companies that we could have a clear conscience working with. And that is why, if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, you're going to see 3 logos. You're going to see WolfSwap, you're going to see Mew, you see Maple. And we do work with other companies, yes. We work with many other companies. But we don't have them as partners, ambassadors, or whatever you want to call it. Good morning, Bullish Bull. And the reason is that we get approached by not as many as we used to, but we used to get 4 or 5 inquiries a week. And now we get 2 or 3 inquiries a week. Maybe that's the sign of the market. Who knows? But the issue is, I want a clear conscience. I want to work with people who do things the right way. I want to work with people that make money. I want to work with people who are doing something different. And I want to work with companies who will go on to do great things. As Brand Crypto Warehouse, we are now associated with a $4.3 billion project that started at $400 million. From our point of view, that increases our stock value. But we knew they were going to grow at that rate because of the way that they are. WolfSwap, when we started with them, had no centralized exchange listings, a low market cap. They had their aggregator, and it is a good aggregator. But it wasn't about anything that they had. It was about their team. Their team are very similar to Maple's team. They are hungry, they work really, really hard, and they're always present. And that's more important. And of course, they make money. That's more important. And now look at WolfSwap, listed on 3 centralized exchanges, launched the fastest ever NFT project, raised whatever amount they raised in 9.3 seconds. They've gone on to great things. But we knew they would because of their team. Maple, because of their team. Mew might be a meme coin, but we know their team. So everybody we work with because of the team and the fact they make money. So I think we should probably focus more on tying this up. But I'm kind of giving you other examples of why we like Maple. And it's not to do with the fact that we just picked 3 companies randomly one day and said, you know what, we should just work with these 3 because they're the 3 that came into the inbox first. I'm not saying we cherry picked them, but we cherry pick who we apply to work with if we apply to work with people. People come to us. Mew came to us. WolfSwap came to us. But we went to Maple. That's the difference. Now, to summarize everything up in one go. How long have we been going for? I hope I haven't been talking for hours and hours and hours. Let's have a quick look. Where is the time? Okay, so we've done about an hour. People love drama. I prefer how straight you are. Appreciate the realism. I think the issue is the more real I am, the less people watch. That's the problem. Okay, if I wanted to sit here and be Crypto Banter or anybody else like George and just tell you what you want to hear, we'd have way more followers. But again, I want to sleep at night. Why do I work with Maple? Because I want to sleep at night. I have a conscience, and I think, again, I've been through this before. I'm old and I'm tired and everything hurts, and I don't want to sit here and be disingenuous and say things just because you want to hear it, okay? Listen, if you've broken your leg, I take you to the hospital. I'm going to tell you, listen, you've broken your leg, but you're not going to die, right? I'm not going to sit there and say, you're going to be fine. You're going to be running 11-second 100 meters in a week's time, which is what other people will tell you. Don't do that. Asset management on chain. Right, this is the conclusion, because I don't want to keep you too long, because I know it's a Saturday, and I know you're all way more interested in buying bags of meme coins, which is fine. Right, I've actually made some notes on this, which I don't normally do, but I thought I'm going to get to the end and read these out. So, battle-hardened, stronger reputation. Maple, if I'm in an online battle on X with somebody about a project, and they say to me, Maple are just going to go bust on the next dump of the market, I will talk about Liberation Day and Liquidation Day. And by the way, I've coined that term on this stream, so thanks for listening to me as I've coined that term. Liberation Day and Liquidation Day. Number 1, they're battle-hardened twice this year. Number 2, the business is solid, irrespective of Web3. It has clients. It has a good, solid, strong loan book. It has a solid present team. And, in my opinion, they have outperformed their expectations. But they haven't outperformed my expectations. They wanted 4 billion by the end of the year. I wanted 6. They want 6 billion by the end of Q1. I'm expecting 10. My expectations are a lot higher because they are managing their own expectations, like we do on here. I think we'll go to 140,000. I might say to you, 140 to 150,000. Deep down, I would really love us to top 150,000. But I have to manage expectations because I have to be as honest as possible. They are not going to come out and say we're going to hit 10 billion and then miss and hit 9 billion. They're going to say we're going to hit 8 and then hit 9, which is a perfectly honourable way to do that. And then finally, these crashes allow them to test themselves in the worst of times. Remember what Alex Ferguson said? If you can't support us when we're losing, don't support us when we're winning. And that applies to pretty much everything in life. If Maple can come through this unscathed, which they have done, then you should pat yourselves on the back that you held through that. And when they do get to $1 or $1.20 or $1.30, whatever it might be, you can pat yourself on the back. People say you're lucky to make money out of crypto. You're not. You're mentally deranged. You're crazy. You are absolutely crazy. You've been strapped to a roller coaster backwards, blindfolded, and left on that roller coaster for 3 years. Up and down, up and down, up and down. Wind in your face, rain, thunderstorms, crashes, all sorts, wheels falling off. You've been through so much that you should pat yourselves on the back. Never let anybody call you lucky. Never let anyone call you lucky. There's nothing lucky about holding Syrup, Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP. There's nothing lucky about any of that. It's not luck, okay? It's conviction, if anything. Blind conviction in some instances, but it's conviction. And it's not blind conviction with Maple. It's I get to look at independent numbers. I get to look at their business because it's on chain and I can see everything they do. And this updates in real time as well. So this number here comes, I believe, probably straight from June or somewhere similar. Updates in real time. If I wanted to and I didn't want to use June, I could go and use one of a few other different platforms that review Maple. But either way, it's on chain. It's live, it's trackable. You can see for yourself. You don't have to watch me. You can go and do it yourself. So for me, passes all this with flying colours, passes this crash with flying colours. And that is pretty much it from the stream. Voice of Reason. I'm buying that one. Somebody, I think it was Pakasad, called me Voice of Reason 2 weeks ago, and I really like that. I might stick. Very true. Very true. Again, you wanna have a light soul when the curtain falls. That's the way I would put that. You just do the right thing. That's all you can do. And I was reading Plato, or Socrates, I can't remember which. And it was talking about democracy, it was talking about oligarchy, it was talking about all these different types of things. And he concluded 2,000 years ago that the only way you can help a society is by controlling what's in your own head and doing the right thing in your head, because every other form of society collapses. Democracy collapses, dictatorships, oligarchies, they all collapse. But your head is the only place where you can actually control your environment. Anyway, that's a different topic for a different stream, probably on Rumble. Thank you for watching to the end. We have an awful lot of people in chat, and I don't know how many people have hit like. I think I saw 89 at one point. So thank you all for watching. I think we've been an hour and a bit. I don't know what we're going to do with Binance Square. I'm going to send a message now to Francis and Daniel and see if they can fix it. But it has been great. Have a great weekend. Thank you for coming. And the GOAT and everybody else on Binance, I did send the money this morning, and I sent it in USDT, so you could buy whatever token you want to buy. I was going to send you all Aster or something, but I've sent you all USDT, so you can go and spend that. And next Wednesday, we have our Mew night. We're going to give away some prizes on Mew, but it won't be as much as last Wednesday, but there will still be prizes next Wednesday. So thank you all for watching to the end of this Maple special. Have a great weekend, and the Oracle is back tonight at 9 o'clock. I am back on Monday. Take care.